Hello, Algorators. Court is back in session. I'm Al Reynolds, and this is the Court of Public Opinion. I'll be serving as your judge, and you, the viewers, will be serving as the jury. Now, you know the Court of Public Opinion is where your voice can and will be heard. Be sure to get those questions ready for us tonight. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, be sure to hit that share button because tonight we have a very special show for you. It's both serious and fun, but it's a new dedicated show. Don't forget to turn on your notifications and don't forget to jump down on those comments hard tonight on this new edition. This new edition, we will be attacking specifically with just one legal beagle, the fiery civil attorney, Stefon Turner. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion.
Your Honor.
You're on. Oh, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready.
All right. So tonight is a special edition about keep your hands to yourself. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore some of pop culture's most trending topics of individuals who find themselves in assault and battery situations, sexual abuse situations. And we want to be very clear about something because this is a very, very sensitive topic, but we're going to have some fun with it. But I do want to say that we are discussing sensitive topics tonight. And if you have been a victim of sexual assault, as you see on the banner here, if you are or have been a victim of sexual assault, please call 1-800-656-4673. Let me repeat that one more time. If you have been the victim of sexual assault, please call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 800-656-4673. All right, let's bring attorney Stefon Turner back to the main stage to talk to me tonight. All right, first up, Stefon, and this is something new. We don't know how often we're going to do this singular format, but I thought that in cases like sexual assault, sexual abuse, we really wanted to be on the forefront of teaching people their rights and also sharing with them resources in case they've ever been a victim of it. All right, first up, Stefon Diggs, welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. Chris Blake Griffin accuses you, Stefon Diggs, of drugging him and trying to have sex with him. He claims it played a part in him getting jumped by your brother. He, quote, said, they likely wanted my mouth closed about the closeted receiver. Okay, attorney Stefon Turner, now this is really good and juicy, right? This is really fiery because we have so many levels of legality here, right? On one side, we have the legal issue of him being jumped. Bailiff, do we have the video? Now, this is Blake. That's Chris Blake Griffin. This is so sad. Ooh. Ooh. This is another angle. He knew he was in trouble when he saw them, right? He tries to go back into the elevator. He calls his friends. And they continue to beat on him. All right, Bailiff, thank you so much for that. So this is what we're looking at in this particular case. The reason why it's so complex is you have here in this case, right, attorney Turner, you have assault, which is a physical attack. You have battery, which was actual harm. You have robbery. You have theft. Some can argue because this was on personal property that it was burglary. You have attempted, he said that he was in fear of his life. So in fear of his life, he's trying to say that somebody tried to kill him. Luckily, there were no weapons involved because if so, there would be a weapon charge. But there was unlawful restraint And then because multiple people were involved, you could say that there was conspiracy. Now, that's one side of the law here. The other side of the law, Attorney Turner, is that he is claiming to out Stefon Diggs on a national social media platform, which is getting national attention. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's talk about the assault first and what type of charges, and not to mention the chain that was robbed from him, he is now also saying was pictured on Stefon Diggs when he did his walk of his fashions for the NFL game that he played on Sunday. Talk to me about this case, Shatan Turner.
Well, the first thing that we have to point out is the obvious. And, I always have to go there. But so the victim is saying that they beat him up because they wanted him to keep his mouth shut. When apparently, if you believe the allegations he's making, at some point, Mr. Diggs did not want him to have his mouth shut. I'm just saying that's how.
Oh, you're so petty. You are so petty.
But yeah, so there are several crimes that can ensue for when somebody's going to get into a fight, and you outlined a bunch of them. There's also disorderly conduct because you're not supposed to be making that kind of ruckus in the elevator. The burglary charge, they might allege that, but you probably could say he wasn't really at home, even though he was in the elevator, so maybe it wasn't burglary. But the thing is, as it relates to this civil allegation of the comments that he made about Mr. Diggs, right? And even I am now making a joke about it. I don't know either of these men, but here I go thinking it's funny, repeating it, right? It is possible that Mr. Diggs could have a claim of defamation against this gentleman. But you have to remember, as we talked about a bunch of times, is that, and as we recall before we get into what I was going to say, defamation is the umbrella tort, if you will. And the two parts of it are slander and libel. People often mix them up and they see something in the paper and like, oh, it's slander. No, slander is an oral statement that is false, that gets published to third parties, and that causes you injury.
Libel, like Jaguar Wright with Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Exactly. Now, what did he say? We can talk about that later. That one on my list. But yeah, and then libel is if it's in print. So given that this guy said it and now it's in print and social media, it's possible that Mr. Diggs could have a libel and a slander claim. The libel would be with whoever wrote it down and published it, and then the slander claim would be on this gentleman. But it has to be a false statement. And from what I understand, there have been rumors about Mr. Diggs' sexuality for quite some time. This guy didn't start them, but he may have amplified them. So if I was representing Mr. Diggs, and this is going to be a sensitive conversation because you know what? Most people, unless you're Diddy, we talk about him later, don't talk about their sex lives, right? With people they're not having sex with. And so they're not talking about if they like it in the back door, if they like it in the front door, if they like to use baby oil, what they doing, right? They're not talking about that. But their lawyer is going to want to have a very specific conversation with him because in the event that he's actually been engaging in homosexual activity, even if he was doing it in the closet, it would be a true statement and he would not be able to sue this guy for defamation. Now, false light is a different type of claim in that the information doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be untrue, but in the way the information is
like misleading.
Right. It puts you in a false light or a negative light. And so in this case, if you're Mr. Diggs, you might be able to, if you have a clever lawyer like me, you might be able to say it's the combination of him alleging that he hired people to jump him in order to conceal the sexuality. So it's not the sexuality itself that he's saying is defamatory. He's saying that he would have people commit a crime, a violent crime, in order to protect his private life that puts him in a false light, because he's not just being accused of being gay, he's accused of being a gay thug, and he might not want to be associated with being a gay thug, right?
That right. But tell me about the issue where he possibly could explore invasion of privacy because he is a public figure. And that occurs when someone reveals private, truthful information about an individual that isn't a public concern. Right? So it's disclosing what would be highly offensive, right, to a reasonable person. And for him, this would be highly offensive. Is this the case here?
However, I don't think it's going to go far with him if it's true. And here's why. This gentleman, and I keep forgetting his name, which is why I call him this gentleman, not to elevate this. No, not Stefon Diggs, the victim.
Oh, yeah. That's his name is Chris Blake Griffith.
That's right. Chris Blake Griffith. So Chris, I don't think Mr. Diggs is going to get far with this invasion of privacy claim. And here's why. It's true the way you described invasion of privacy, but you have to remember invasion of privacy is not just a privacy claim. It's an invasion of privacy claim. And so where's the invasion? If it's true that Mr. Diggs attempted to have sex with this guy, right? This guy did not invade his privacy. This guy was potentially the victim of attempted rape, and all he did was tell his story, right? So that's where they're going to have to unpack if this is something that happened to this gentleman or if he just made it up. Like if he just made it up and he was never with Diggs and Diggs was never trying to do these things, that's a different story. And he just heard through the rumorville and started to amplify the sexuality. But if it's true that he was in this situation with Diggs and he was compromised, then Diggs needs to kind of leave it alone. Other than, like I said, he doesn't want to say that he's a gay thug.
Because if he tries to bring this, to fruition, to some type of legal ramification, he could run the risk of it being played out in media and in the media. Right. So let's talk about the last element of this, which is he has a contract with the NFL. He has contract with sponsors. This guy is beloved, like in the fashion industry. He's considered, he's invited to all of the fashion shows. He sits on the front row. Could this possibly have some type of ramifications on not only his, employment contract with the NFL, but all of his sponsorships as well?
Potentially. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because one part of the defamation thing that I didn't play out, which relates to the morality clause, is the damages portion. Like, how much would he be injured if this sexuality story is actually false, right? And so part of that comes with the times, right? We're living in a different time. Sexuality has become fluid for a lot of people. If you're representing Mr. Griffiths, you're like, look, he was just blown off at the mouth. And even if it was a lie, he wasn't damaged anyway, because this is 2024 and people understand and nobody cares. So that relates to morality clause, because the question becomes, what is the allegation of the immoral conduct or unethical conduct? But here's what I say to you is that his biggest problem, right? His biggest problem has to do with this crime.
The fighting.
Crime. Well, if Diggs ordered the hit, right? That's his biggest exposure. Like, he probably should put to the side whether somebody's right, and focus on whether or not he has a defense to being accused of engaging in a crime, because that would be a violation of the morality clause, and that's the part to be taken more seriously.
Right. Oh, I get you. Oh, that makes perfect sense. But see, you know what? I was also thinking, we have never experienced in professional football or basketball an athlete that has come out as, gay or homosexual or even bisexual that has been able to keep a job. So I understand why he probably, if any of this is true, all of this is allegedly, right? Because this is what Blake said, that's something he doesn't want to go down that route on either side of those, right? He doesn't want to go down that route. He wants that to go away. He wants that conversation to go away, number one, because it could jeopardize his brand. It could jeopardize front office. It could jeopardize the locker room talk. in the interaction. And then on the other side, he better hope that they don't get any, he didn't have any text messages that are out there saying, go beat this guy up and steal that chain, and I'm going to wear it on Sunday, because that to me looks very suspicious.
Oh, I agree. I mean, but that's what people do when they're trying to mess with folk, right? They do stuff like that. Like, yeah, I took your stuff. Don't you remember, like, back in elementary school, if somebody beat somebody up and they took their lunchbox, they'd be flaunting that lunchbox all around because
Right.
they wanted to make a statement. That's childish if he did that. But to your point, if you're representing Mr. Diggs, what you say is, look, sexuality may be fluid in America, but it ain't fluid in the locker room. And so this
Right.
is defamatory. My client was damaged, and pay us now and stop saying it.
Got it. All right, there you go. You have it. There you go with Stefon Diggs and his I guess his face off with Chris Blake Griffin. I just thought it was very interesting how Griffith like really stacked this story. He put in being drugged, which is similar to the Diddy situation. He put in because he wants to have sex with him. Then he put in that his one of a kind chain was stolen, and then all of a sudden Diggs had on that one of a kind chain on Sunday as he was being seen going into the locker room. All right, next up, another professional athlete in the National Football League, Jabril Peppers. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. Jabril Peppers faces several serious legal charges based on an incident described in the charges as assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, which I want to talk about that with you, Attorney Turner, because there are different laws in the state of Massachusetts, and we want our legal beagles to teach our algoriters how anything in certain states can be considered a dangerous weapon, even toenail clippers, strangulation, and possession of a controlled substance class B, which they believe to be cocaine. All right, so let's talk about this, because whoever is working for this young woman, she has really stacked the cases, because she brought in strangulation, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, as well as just basic assault and battery. What does this mean, Attorney Turner?
Well, so first of all, as it relates to strangulation, I don't know if this young lady is trying to go back with him or not, but the research shows that anybody who would strangle someone else is actually at significant at a higher risk for potentially killing them. And so for the algoriters out there, if somebody that you're involved with puts their hands around your neck and that's how they decide to abuse you, you should run fast and get far away, because history shows that that is indicating a higher propensity for serious violence in a way that other types of acts don't.
And let's make sure we understand that strangulation involves restricting another person's airway or blood flow by applying pressure to the neck.
Yes.
So it's intentional.
Yes.
And you know that the state of Massachusetts, even the strangulation would be considered the most serious of felonies.
Yeah, so he's in a lot. He is in a lot of trouble. He's in a lot of trouble. To get to your point about potential weapons, right? Your eyeglasses can be construed as a deadly weapon depending on how you want to use them. And we were talking about that show the other day, and one of the attorneys were talking about Floyd Mayweather's hands being registered as lethal weapons, right? If you're trained in martial arts, those nunchucks, deadly weapons, right? It's really your intent to use the things. I mean, I was trying to think. There was some case a while ago, I think, that someone did take their eyeglasses and like stab someone through the eyes when they were sleeping, right? Just because it wasn't a knife and that wasn't their intended purpose doesn't mean that it's not a deadly weapon. So, for the algoriters out there, be careful. Like, don't pick up stuff and try to hit people with them, because you may find that you're in trouble.
Definitely in certain states. So, for instance, in the state of Massachusetts, like I told you, fingernail clippers, possibly the sharpness, if you're using it to poke somebody's eye out or to stab them in the face, could be used or thought of as a violent, deadly weapon, which comes with a violent felony charge. And in the state of Massachusetts, that comes up with up to 15 years in prison. That's more prison time, Attorney Turner, than assault and battery. So you can go beat her up. Not saying that that's what we want to happen, but in this particular case, it could range from probation or fine or up to 2.5 years in jail. But that weapon that is deemed deadly can get you up to 15 years. And that's even more than a strangulation. Strangulation in the state of Massachusetts can get you up to 5 years in prison.
Well, think about this. The reason for the heightened penalty is all in the description of the crime that you mentioned, right? Once they conclude that the weapon is deadly, that means that it was your intent to attempt to kill them, right? Deadly. Whoa. Right. So that's why you get to the heightened thing. Like they might say like the strangulation was an act of passion, right? They may have excuses for other things that you do with your hands. People are human, they get emotional. But once they've concluded that you had a deadly weapon, then your intent, right, which is part of the crime, the mens rea, is to use them for the intent to attempt to kill. And that's how you get the extra penalty.
All right. Lastly, let's talk about his professional ramifications, because as we know, this young man was a very talented athlete. In fact, he was a team captain. What about the, not just the legal ramifications, but after his legal issues, his criminal issues, maybe his civil issues, he now has to face the NFL disciplinary action, which could also lead to possibly not only being fined, suspended, but also expulsion.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, he is in a world of trouble, right? As a public figure, as an athlete, his image is tied to his employment. And you mentioned morality clauses. In this case, he's facing very significant criminal charges. And the NFL has been trying to rebrand itself from the
sexual, domestic violence stuff with women.
Right. They've had a problem for decades. And there's been evidence that for some stars of the past, and I won't name them, that they were engaged in domestic violence and it got covered up. And then there have been recent public cases. We just watched the one with Griffiths getting beat up by the guy's brother in the elevator. But remember, it wasn't that long ago that we saw a football player beating up his girlfriend. And I think she was pregnant. Right. In the elevator. And there were a string of those cases for a while. So right. I'm not saying that people who play football are more predisposed to beat women. Maybe people are just more interested in those cases because they're famous, but they're not going to allow this to slide, even though he's a star. Because one of the things that they've seen with the Colin Kaepernick and all of the stuff is that Americans love football until they don't. And so they do not want to be seen as a haven for men who beat women. They just don't.
Right. Yeah, it's bad for the brand. Speaking of public perception, Jussie Smollett, welcome back to the Court of Public Opinion. We wanted to unpack this one a little bit more because we're still trying to understand how, with all his ongoing legal claims, he still is asserting that he did not do it. He remains his assertion of innocence regarding his 2019 attack. Like I said, even though he has admitted, like buying the items and used in the attack, he said though in fact did not do the attack. Attorney Turner, talk to me on if he's going to stick to this case, right? Because he's obviously not coming off of it. It's been 5 years. What would be your defense if you were representing Jussie Smollett?
Well, Messy Jussie gets the award for the man who sticks to a story and, is committed to it. The only person who probably is better at sticking to a story than Jussie is Donald Trump, right? Like, even though all the pictures showed that there weren't that many people at the inauguration, he said it was the biggest one in history, right? Even
Right.
though he was standing on the stage encouraging people to like go charge the Capitol, he's like, no, I never did it. So, and Jesse's like, even though, I bought the stuff, even though I was holding a sandwich when I was still calling, they wanted to beat me up, but they didn't want a Subway sandwich. And even though they tried to strangle me, but they didn't know how to tie a noose, even though all of these things make it look like I'm lying, trust me, there are these facts that you don't know about, and they are the true facts, and they will, exonerate me.
So what could the truth be? Let's just unpack it for fun right now, because like I shared with everybody a couple of times, I was a lead commentator on the Jussie Smollett, the hoax, which was on Fox Nation. It was a 5-part docuseries. I sat with multiple lawyers. I went through all the court documents. I went through the video of him picking the brothers up, driving them around, going through a run through of how it's all supposed to go down. I was privy to the documents in which the check was shown, where he wrote them a check. I was privy to the conversations that Fox executives had with Lee Daniels about reducing Jussie Smollett's role on Empire, if not killing them off. I saw all of this information. So I'm just thinking in my head, can he argue? Let's just give Jussie the benefit of the doubt. Can Jussie Smollett argue that, hey, all that evidence that you guys saw, all of that was in fact true, but I called it off. I called it off. And when I called it off, I didn't think that they would still attack me, but they did. I'm just trying to find something, because I don't understand. I'm really reaching to understand what additional facts can he show that's going to disprove all the footage that we viewed on the team that covered this documentary. The hours on hours of Chicago, the city's different cameras, hours and hours of cameras from neighbors that were subpoenaed of him coming to pick the brothers up and doing different transactions with them. Hours and hours of the footage of them going to the store and purchasing different stuff. Hours and hours of conversations and text messages on the phone. Like, how do you make all of that go away and present new information that proves that you may have started this, but you didn't finish it?
Well, that's precisely the point. Remember, the standard in criminal cases is beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so the way that you get to, and I'm just guessing because I don't know Jussie, and even though he's handsome and light skinned, he don't have to call me because he don't have any interest in me. But he, like, his story has to have been shown that it was his intent to commit a crime. So all of the stuff that you mentioned that he did, those things are not illegal, right? So that's why he probably admitted to that. You can give people a ride. You can write people checks. You could buy MAGA hats and nooses and all those things. None of those activities are illegal on their own. And so what kind of stories might exist that would give those context? He was training for a role, right?
Okay.
Right? He's an actor, but we never saw you do that role to me. Yeah, after all this stuff went bad, they took it away and I couldn't find a job, right? So that's one of the things. The other thing is I had a pet project in my mind, right? Because he's produced and directed something with Vivica Fox. Yeah, I never was able to get my project off the ground because my name was mud in Hollywood. But yeah, that's why I was interacting with these gentlemen. Sure, they were supposed to do those things, but they were training me. It was for a role. And when it went sideways, I freaked out and I just said that it was MAGA and it really wasn't true, right? So those are things that you could say. The other thing, to your point, is assuming he's not making up some new set of story, right? Some new fake story. He could say, as you indicated, I changed my mind. I had no idea that these African brothers were the type of folks who's like, you know what, we got paid, so we doing the job anyway, right? I called it off. I said don't, but then the next thing I know is I didn't have, you've seen these on crime shows, right? I didn't have their right number. I attempted to call it off. They did it anyway. It wasn't right. All of that kind of stuff. And say, you know what? There was no. And oh, by the way, Al, let's think about this.
Okay.
The crime doesn't really occur until he lies.
Lied. Yes.
Now,
exactly.
You could even get somebody to beat you up because that's what you're
That's not a crime. Right.
Yeah, I think some of the Diddy victims said he may have been into that, right?
Right.
But yeah, the crime doesn't occur until he lies. And so I'm not sure how he gets around that. But if I were his lawyer, I would just say he was so overwhelmed that he didn't know what he was saying.
So we would play the mental capacity, but he doesn't want to play that card. He doesn't. He's saying everything except for that. He did say that he went to rehab, but he's saying he's still sticking to his guns. He's saying that everything that he said from beginning to now is the truth. Okay, like I said, everybody, hopefully this Friday we'll have the African brothers right here in the court of public opinion. I'll be interviewing them about this Jussie Smollett case. So be sure to turn on your notifications. If we don't get them in the studio by Friday, we definitely are going to do some with them over the weekend. So be sure to turn on your notifications. All right, last up before we close out the night, we have P. Diddy. P. Diddy, welcome back to the court of public opinion. I guess we're just going to have a P. Diddy segment every night about what's going on with Diddy. Before we talk about the 5 new developments in the Diddy case, the one that is the most significant to me, Attorney Turner, is that they have decided, right? For those who did not know, the U.S. Attorney General of the Southern District is an African-American man named Damian Williams. Also, the judge who was presiding over this particular case is named Andrew L. Carter, and he too is African-American. However, recently, Judge Carter has decided to step down. Now, the rumor mill has it that he decided to step down because his wife has a professional conflict of interest. Attorney Turner, talk to me about that. Why would a judge have to step down because some type of personal conflict exists with her husband being the judge over this case?
We have to speculate about what that might be, which is fun because it's just you and me and all the algoriters. I don't know what the conflict of interest is. I think before we get into the substance of that, one thing that should be interesting to all the algoriters and to you is that this district court judge stepped down, and Clarence Thomas did not recuse himself from many cases before the Supreme Court involving Donald Trump, even though his wife was a big Trumper. So the Supreme Court doesn't have ethical rules that they have to adhere to like they do with lower courts, but this just highlights the problem. If it's good enough for district court, it should be good enough for the Supreme Court. Okay, that's my soapbox. I don't know, but let's think about this, right?
Yeah, I want to know. This is juicy to me.
I haven't seen a picture of this judge's wife, but here's what we know about judges. And I looked at his picture. I'm sure he has a great personality, but he wasn't looking all that handsome in the pictures I saw. They probably weren't at a good angle, but he's brilliant, right? He's a federal judge. He's brilliant. He's got good pedigree. And even though judges don't make a ton of money, a lot of times they go to the bench after working in private practice where they earned a ton of money and they still earn a respectable living. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is I bet his wife is pretty, right? Pretty girl who grew up in Manhattan, even if she didn't move there until her 20s, because I don't know who she is, so I'm just making up my own story, like Sex
in your head.
And she was kicking it, like I was kicking it back in the day. Only she was kicking it at a freak off party. Like,
oh no. I was thinking maybe she worked in public relations. Maybe she was a PR, a publicist or something. And maybe at one time she had Diddy as a client or she PR'd for one of his parties. I really would like for us to get to the bottom of what this personal conflict of interest with the wife, because think about it. And you know this, Attorney Turner, these type of opportunities for a judge like that, this is a career maker.
Right.
This changes his whole trajectory in his career. He's able to write books. He's able to do interviews. He will be a part of the history making in his judicial system in one of the toughest courts in America. So it's really just disturbing that this conflict was so strong that he decided to put all of that aside in order to, I guess, protect his wife.
Well, but here's the thing. He did it to protect himself. And so we may see them on divorce court later if he's given up all the opportunities that you mentioned. But no, he did it to protect himself, because here's the thing that prudent jurists do, and even lawyers, if they're also ethical, and it's this: if there's a potential for an appearance of impropriety, then you really should recuse yourself, because what you don't want is to give the defendant another defense because they're able to impugn your character, right? So whatever it is for the wife, I would gather, though, that it may be something negative. That's why I was saying maybe she was at a freak off party, or maybe she had some interaction with Diddy where she sued him, if she's an attorney, something that was against his interest, right? If she was favorable towards him, right, that would be a conflict as well, but that's not something that he would have an issue with, right? Like, if you think you're in good with the judge's wife, you're not telling anybody about that. You're hoping it works out in your favor. And so if I had to bet money, something happened between them that was less than favorable. But the other thing is, too, like, if she's a lawyer, and I don't know that she is, but when you're a lawyer at a big firm, what happens when anybody's going to take a new client is they run something called a conflicts check, right?
Right. Yes.
And the conflicts check goes to the entire firm to see if anybody has
a touch point. That's right.
That are against you, that would compromise their ability to fairly represent you. And so it may not be as direct as we're saying. I mean, just for algoriters, I don't know that that one was at a freak off party. I was just making some stuff up because Al told me to. But seriously, it could be as indirect as she worked at a firm and someone else had a conflict, and so they're just being careful. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
How this all plays out. All right. All right, everybody, you heard it first right here. The moral of the story here with all of these individuals is keep your hands to yourself. And also, if you are or have been a victim of sexual assault, please call 1-800-656-4673. Like I said, if you are or have been a victim of sexual assault, please call 1-800-656-4673. Also, be sure to hit that like button. Also, hit that subscribe button. If you're subscribed, be sure to hit that share button. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, because we hope to have in the court of public opinion the African brothers who are going to talk about their experience on the other side of the law as it relates to Jussie Smollett and the accusations that he's not lying, that they are. All right, so be sure to stay tuned. This is the part of the show where we're going to get to your questions. I think we have 2 questions here, Bailiff. First one is Vanessa Henson. Al, you were a part of the documentary on Jussie. If called, would you testify? Oh, no, I was just a lead commentator on the documentary. So what they do is they hire you to talk about, all the information that they've gathered, and you share your thoughts and your insight on what some of it means. So what that means is I had to go through all of the court documents. I had to go through all of the text messages. I had to go through all of the voicemails. I had to go through all of the receipts. They give you everything. It's almost like you're in like this room and they just give you all the evidence of the case. You kind of absorb it, and then they ask you questions about the case and you spit it back out. I even have had the opportunity to spend hours on end with the African brothers and interviewing them. They've also, had hours and hours of conversation with their mother and their lawyer. So it's going to be a very interesting show on Friday, because as you guys have heard me say here on this show 100 times before, I'm a Jussie Smollett fan. I'm also was a huge fan of his family, especially his mother. People don't know that his mother and his father are really just like stand-up citizens, incredible people as it relates to social and civil justice. His dad was a photographer in Atlanta. He used to, chronicle, social and civil justice marches and stuff for the mayors of Atlanta. Just an incredible. We know his brothers and sisters have been acting for over a span of 3 and 4 decades. Just a stand-up Hollywood family. So for me to have gone through all of that information, interviewed the brothers' mothers, interviewed the lawyers, to me, it's just very hard for me to understand how we've ended up here with Jussie. And we're going to explore that on Friday. All right, next up, Paula Beecham. He said they were friends, didn't he? Yes, they were friends. I think I can say allegedly that they were friends. He had invited them to his house on numerous occasions. They had gone out on numerous occasions. I mean, there's no secret. They've gone to bathhouses together on numerous occasions. What else? They've even gotten roles. He's helped them get roles on Empire. He's also trained them. The brothers have trained him, worked with him in a trainer capacity. And it's interesting. I want you algorithm to be sure to turn on your notifications. If they're here, I want to know your questions, and we're going to unpack it. I'm not going to hold back. We're going to talk about one of them going to the bathhouse with him, not just once, not just twice. We're going to talk about them hanging out at his apartment. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to unpack it all because they feel like they need to clear their name, and it's always two sides to every story. We're going to offer them the opportunity to talk about it right here on the Court of Public Opinion. All right, everybody, that brings our show to a conclusion tonight. Thank you so much for your trust in listening to us break down these stories. We're not going to give a verdict or do you want to give a verdict?
I wanted to leave one comment for the algoriters. I think that we did a lot of work tonight talking about keeping your hands to yourself. And the one point I would add for the algoriters, I mean, some of this is extreme. I think the algoriters all know you can't hire somebody to jump somebody in an elevator. That's a no. But as it relates to the concept of sexual assault generally, where it can get blurry, in particular with adolescents, right? And people in college and people who are just hanging out. Like, you need to remember the old adage of no means no. And you can't do anything to kind of make it easier or prime the well or induce someone to engage in sexual relations with you. So if you're like slipping powders in somebody's drink because it's going to make them woozy, or if somebody told you, just give her an ecstasy and tell her it's aspirin just because it'll make it easier, that is sexual assault all day long. And I think most people know that, but because these cases keep coming up, not everyone does. So don't do it. It's immoral, but it's also unlawful. And if you get found to have done that, then you are going to find yourself with criminal charges. And the other thing about the deadly weapon thing I wanted to bring up too, Al, is this going back to the case in Boston. Kids get caught up with that too. So make sure your children know if they get into a fight, they shouldn't just be picking up stuff to try to hit somebody with, because kids can find themselves having their charges become adult charges because they decided to use a weapon and instead of, using their fists or whatever. So it gets complicated. There's layers to it, but no means no. Only have sex with people who are exciting about having sex with you, unimpaired, and don't reach for a deadly weapon.
All right, everybody. This concludes today's session in the Court of Public Opinion. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, turn on your notifications. And thank you for always jumping down into the chat and asking us great questions. Court is now adjourned.